When you first start a band, there's like this incredibly romantic idea about doing it all yourself. I mean, you're the lead singer, you're the lead guitarist, you're booking the dive bars.
Right, you're basically the roadie too, lugging all those heavy amps into the back of your beat-up van.
Exactly. It's gritty and it's exhausting, but, it's yours.
Yeah, and it really becomes this badge of honor. You control every single note, and every one of those late nights feels like, proof of your dedication.
Oh, totally. But then your song actually hits the radio, and suddenly you're booked to play a massive stadium.
Yeah.
And you realize very quickly that you just can't be the one plugging in the amps and tuning the guitars while, simultaneously trying to entertain 50,000 people.
Right, the show will literally just fall apart.
Yeah. And okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly the mission of today's deep dive.
It really is.
We are looking at what is probably the most difficult, identity shifting phase of any business journey. How do you transition from being that gritty, do-it-all operator, that founder, to a strategic CEO, and then eventually to a chairman?
It's a huge leap.
It is. And to figure out how to actually survive this shift, we've got a really fascinating stack of sources today. We're looking at leadership research from Vistage, a super blunt medical perspective on hustle culture from the CG Medical Council, a mental model from a book called Faster Than Normal, and some really raw interview transcripts with Nathan Chan.
Right, the CEO of Founder.
Exactly, the guy who built a massive media empire and interviewed billionaires along the way.
And, what really stands out across all these materials is just the urgency of it all. Shifting from an operator to an owner, it isn't just some corporate luxury anymore. It's really a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's relevant for you listening right now, whether you're, running a startup, leading a department, or just trying to manage your own independent projects without totally losing your mind. If you don't make this shift, you basically become the ultimate bottleneck in your own life.
Wow, yeah, the bottleneck. And the modern landscape is practically forcing this transition right now. I was looking at that CG Medical Council piece, and it lays this out so clearly regarding the whole death of hustle culture.
Oh, absolutely.
For a decade, lack of sleep was viewed as a weakness, right? Burnout was celebrated. But today, that entire narrative is just completely falling apart.
Yeah, investors are not looking at a sleep-deprived founder who lives under their desk and thinking, wow, we found a hero.
Right. They look at that and they just see a massive liability. Capital has fundamentally changed its tune here. The sources point out that investors today actually demand what they call low founder dependency and sustainable unit economics. Wait, let's pause on that term for a second. Sustainable unit economics. For anyone who, completely glazes over at financial jargon, what does that actually look like in real life?
Well, it basically means you are making more money on a single customer than it costs you to acquire them.
Okay.
But doing so in a way that doesn't require the founder to personally close every single deal.
All right.
Because, speed without direction just wastes capital. When founders are chronically exhausted, they make really terrible reactive decisions.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, the grind didn't build better companies. It really just built a mythology that is now cracking under the weight of mental health crises and super high turnover.
And the Vistage research really backs this up. They highlight the exact red flags that show when a founder has become that bottleneck. It's when your growth stalls, even though you have a completely proven product. Right. Or when every single decision, no matter how tiny, gets stuck at your desk waiting for approval. Your teams are working in silos, and you're spending way more time putting out daily fires than actually setting the strategy for next year.
You're just reacting all day.
Exactly. But I have to push back here a little bit. Letting go sounds amazing in a boardroom, but when it's your own money on the line, isn't micromanaging kind of a survival instinct?
Well, sure, it feels like it.
Right. How can you trust someone else with your livelihood? If we know that the research says holding on hurts the company, why is it so incredibly hard for operators to actually just hand over the keys?
Because it's not just about control. It's often a deeply ingrained addiction to the work itself.
An addiction.
Yeah. Nathan Chan talked about this explicitly in his Life Hack interview. He actually burned himself out trying to salvage the day-to-day operations of his company, not because he didn't trust his people, but because he genuinely loved the work. He loved being on the tools, as he called it. He loved the hands-on marketing, the copywriting, creating the content.
I get that. It's like that dopamine hit of ticking things off a to-do list. It feels super productive in the moment.
And it is productive at the very start. But staying on the tools creates this massive blind spot. It basically artificially limits the business to your own personal energy levels.
And you only have so much energy.
Right. You cannot be a master of every single trade forever. So to truly grow, you have to transition to leading, empowering others, and really stepping back to look at the horizon. You need to be looking like 6 to 24 months out.
Wow.
So the question really becomes, do you want to be a solo operator, having fun playing all the instruments? Or do you want to build something of true worth and significance? Because if it's the latter, that hands-on addiction has to be broken.
And breaking that addiction requires a massive ego death, which kind of brings us to how early success can actually become a leader's biggest vulnerability.
Oh, definitely.
There's this brutal story in the Nathan Chan transcripts. He had built up his company, things were humming along, and someone left a comment on his personal Facebook page that essentially said, "Geez, everything Nathan touches turns to gold."
The infamous Midas touch delusion.
Yes. And the craziest part is that he admits he actually believed it. I mean, he was a guy who wasn't super academic, he kind of scraped through school, and suddenly he's running this wildly successful business.
So he got an ego.
A massive ego. He thought he was completely invincible. And because of that hubris, he started spending recklessly and hiring super aggressively because he just assumed whatever he did would naturally work out.
And the financial reality check that followed that was just devastating.
Yeah, tell me about the $600,000 executive.
Right, so he was in talks to hire this high-level executive for $600,000 a year. And this executive looked under the hood at the financials and warned Nathan, "Hey, your return on Facebook ads is on a decline. What's the plan here?"
And Nathan just brushed it off.
Completely brushed it off. Spun him this confidence story, and the executive actually walked away from the deal. But that warning was completely accurate. Almost overnight, their return on ad spend, their ROAS, plummeted from 1.3 to 0.6.
Okay, let's break that math down because that is terrifying for anyone in business. A 1.3 ROAS means for every dollar you put into the ad machine, you get $1.30 back. You're basically printing money.
Exactly, but a 0.6.
That means for every dollar you spend, you are only making 60 cents back. You are actively losing 40 cents on every single dollar.
Right. And when you've considered that they were spending roughly $1 million a month on ads,
$1 million?
yeah, that math will bankrupt you overnight. He ended up losing $500,000 in a single month.
Oh my God. But wait, why did the ads suddenly fail? Was it just like bad luck or an algorithm update?
Not at all. It was just fundamental mechanics. When you spend $1 million a month on a single platform, you hit audience saturation incredibly fast.
Oh, I see.
The algorithm simply runs out of cheap, highly targeted clicks. Ad fatigue sets in, the audience gets tired of seeing your same creative, and your costs just skyrocket. But because Nathan was so blinded by his own Midas touch ego, he wasn't looking ahead at the data at all.
That's rough.
He vividly describes finding himself literally crying in a corner, facing the reality of having to do layoffs for the very first time. I mean, his ego was completely shattered.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What fascinates me is how he handled the aftermath of that. He used this concept that Ray Dalio champions, the formula of pain plus reflection equals progress.
Weaponizing adversity.
Exactly, he weaponized it. Instead of just trying to scramble back to the old, chaotic way of running ads, he used that immense pain to completely rebuild his business model.
Right, moving away from unpredictable ad revenue.
Yeah, he built a predictable, recurring subscription model that actually covered all his fixed costs. He engineered the business so he would never, ever be in that vulnerable position again.
And connecting this back to the bigger picture, it really highlights a psychological trap that so many successful leaders face. In his interviews, Nathan calls it the never enough virus.
The never enough virus.
He actually asked the founders of Reddit and Airbnb, people who have built generational wealth, if there's ever a point where it actually feels like enough.
And what did they say?
They just laughed and said no. The pursuit of the next win is completely endless.
Wow. So if that drive literally never turns off, how do you keep it from driving you off a cliff?
But using what they call inversion. During a winning streak, when you feel like you are just on top of the world, that is exactly when you need to be hyper paranoid.
Right, check your ego.
Exactly. You actively ask yourself, how could this business fail today? By inverting the problem, you build safety nets before you actually need them, and you avoid that catastrophic hubris.
But, knowing you need to step back and check your ego creates a completely new problem. It leaves a vacuum. Because once you accept that you can't be the one plugging in the amps forever, you look at your desk and there are literally a million different things demanding your attention. How do you actually identify what deserves your time in a sea of shiny objects?
That is exactly where that mental model from fast to the normal becomes so essential. It introduces this concept of the critical few.
The critical few, like the 80-20 rule.
Exactly. It's a close cousin of the Pareto principle, but applied strictly to leadership focus. So the core idea is that a tiny minority of your inputs drives the vast majority of your outcomes. The biggest mistake leaders make is democratic allocation.
Meaning they treat every task on their to-do list as if it has the exact same value.
Precisely. They spread their effort evenly across 100 items when only like 5 of those items actually move the needle. The strategy is to identify those critical few, the few key customers, the few strategic decisions, the core team members, and aggressively overweight your time there.
I understand the theory, but practically speaking, how does a founder actually filter out the noise? Because, shiny object syndrome is real. You see a competitor jump on a new social platform and panic sets in. You think, uh-oh, we have to do that too.
Well, to cure that shiny object syndrome, Nathan Chan uses a brilliantly simple 1 to 10 decision framework. You take any new initiative and you just rank it from 1 to 10 across 3 specific pillars.
Okay, what are the pillars?
Pillar 1 is ease of execution. Basically, how hard is this going to be to actually pull off with the resources we have?
Got it.
Pillar 2 is financial impact. Is this actually going to genuinely move the needle on our revenue? And then pillar 3 is customer impact. Does this genuinely benefit the people we actually serve?
So if an idea is super hard to execute, makes absolutely no money, and the customers don't care, it scores incredibly low, and you just drop it.
You drop it immediately. And a great example of finding a high-impact strategy through this lens was when Nathan secured an interview with Richard Branson for his magazine.
Oh, this is a great story.
Right, because the traditional media playbook says you take your biggest asset, your crown jewel, and you lock it behind a paywall to force people to subscribe.
Right, you charge for everything.
But he used an 80-20 right hook strategy. He gave that entire Richard Branson issue away completely for free.
Wait, really? Just free?
Yep, he plastered it everywhere as a free download. And why? Because when he ran it through that 1 to 10 framework, the long-term customer impact and the ease of building immense brand trust far outweigh the short-term financial hit of just giving away one magazine issue.
That makes total sense.
That single move built a massive email list. And in digital business, owning your audience via email is just the ultimate tool for scaling relationships.
So he identified his critical few levers: trust and distribution. I also noticed in our sources that a lot of founders manage this whole mental load by using what's called a second brain.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, they use tools like Notion to organize these priorities, or they even use AI like ChatGPT as a sounding board. They talk out their decisions, they document their lessons, and it makes sure they stay fiercely aligned with their critical few instead of drifting back into the weeds.
But, identifying your critical few leaves you with a really glaring question. If you are only focusing on those top 5 things, who is handling the other 95?
Exactly. The work still has to get done somehow.
And this is where the transition from operator to owner really takes root. You have to stop asking how to do something and start asking who can do it. You need to build an ecosystem of high-performing talent.
Find the who, not the what.
Yes. In Silicon Valley, they constantly talk about the 10x engineer, this idea that one truly exceptional person can do the work of 10 average people.
That concept can sound kind of intimidating if you're not a massive tech company, but I love how this applies to the everyday listener. Even if you're a team of 3, that 10x principle still applies. It means stopping the habit of spending your entire weekend trying to learn some mediocre skill and instead finding a freelancer or an employee who already lives and breathes that exact problem.
It's really about buying speed. If you need to run TikTok ads, the old founder mindset says, oh, I'll just figure out the algorithm myself. But the CEO mindset says, I need to find the person who just profitably spent $2 million on TikTok ads and hire them.
And finding those 10x people doesn't always mean poaching incredibly expensive executives from Google either. Our sources had a fascinating story about a brand called Hi Smile.
Yes, the teeth whitening brand.
Right. They are spending hundreds of millions on highly effective marketing, and they're based entirely out of the Gold Coast in Australia. And their secret: they actively seek out young, hungry talent, specifically from sports and soccer backgrounds.
The psychology there is just brilliant.
Why athletes, though?
Because they already understand discipline. They understand repetitive practice, and they are highly coachable. You take that raw drive, you teach them the specific marketing skills, and you develop incredibly loyal, long-term leaders within your company.
But whether you are trying to attract that kind of hungry talent or you're trying to attract high-quality mentors, you have to be able to actually pitch the vision. You have to articulate the hero's journey of your company.
Right. People want to join a mission.
They don't just want to take a job. And crucially, if you want access to the bad people, you have to completely rethink how you treat gatekeepers.
Oh, the gatekeeper stories in these transcripts are literally a masterclass in persistence and respect.
They really are. I was reading the notes on how much rejection Nathan faced early on, and it's staggering. I mean, he pitched Noah Kagan, a highly successful entrepreneur, at an event.
He waited in that huge line, though.
Stood in a massive line just to talk to him. Noah basically looked at his numbers, said, "You're too small," handed him a sticker, and just walked away.
Just a total gut punch.
A total gut punch. But Nathan didn't get bitter about it. He put his head down, he built the brand, and years later, Noah actually reached out and they became friends.
It just proves that you have to respect the process and you have to respect the people guarding the process.
Speaking of guarding the process, let's talk about that Richard Branson interview again. He didn't just fire off a generic email to some info inbox.
No, he dug up the direct phone number for Branson's head of PR.
Yeah, and he managed to get her on the phone for literally 2 minutes while she was rushing to get on the tube in London. He respectfully pitched her his vision, secured the email introduction, and actually got the interview.
It's incredible.
Or the Tony Robbins story. He finally lands an interview with Tony Robbins. He is sitting in his parents' basement in Australia at 3:00 a.m.
And the power goes out.
The power goes out. The interview is entirely canceled. But because he had built so much trust with the team and handled the disaster so professionally, Tony Robbins actually remembered him months later and did the interview in New York.
You know, this completely reframes the concept of access. We often think of gatekeepers as obstacles, like they're deliberately trying to keep us out. But a way better analogy is the Secret Service.
Oh, I like that. The Secret Service.
Right, because the Secret Service isn't keeping you away from the president out of spite. Their literal job is to protect the principal's time and safety. Executive assistants and PR reps, they are the Secret Service for these highly successful people.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
If you prove that you respect their time, that you are totally professional, and that you bring real value, they're the ones who will open the door for you. You don't get in by fighting the Secret Service. You get in by proving you actually belong.
Well, it's like trying to get into an exclusive club, right? You don't yell at the bouncer, you build a relationship with them, and eventually the owner invites you to the VIP table.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've identified your critical few, you've navigated the gatekeepers, and you've hired your 10X team. Now comes what is probably the absolute hardest part of the founder to CEO transition.
The culture piece.
Yes. How do you hold these incredibly talented people accountable without being constantly confrontational and without letting your company culture just rot from the inside out?
This is usually where the wheels fall off the wagon for a lot of founders. And the guiding principle here is a pretty harsh reality. You walk past what you endorse.
You walk past what you endorse.
Yeah, it's drawn from the broken windows theory in criminology.
Oh, right, where one broken window leads to more.
Exactly. The theory states that if a building has one broken window that is left unrepaired, it signals to the entire neighborhood that nobody cares, and soon all the windows will be broken. In business, your culture is not the ping pong table in the break room.
Or the mission statement painted on the wall.
Right. Your culture is what you actually do. It is the behaviors you tolerate.
That 3 p.m. employee story is the perfect example of a broken window. It is so painful to read, but honestly so relatable for anyone who has ever managed a team.
Oh, it's brutal.
Nathan hired his very first employee, this kid he met at an event who he thought had a lot of hustle. This kid was supposed to start his day at 9 a.m. Instead, he started rolling into the office at 2:0 or 3:00 in the afternoon.
And Nathan, wanting to be the cool boss, just said nothing.
Nothing. He herded confrontation, and he really wanted his employees to like him, so he just let it happen. And wait, it gets worse. This kid would walk over to the other hardworking employees at 4:30 p.m., right as they were exhausted and getting ready to go home, and he would dump all his unfinished work on their desks.
Wow.
And Nathan let this dynamic go on for a year and a half.
That is a year and a half of signaling to your entire company that the rules simply do not matter. That is exactly how you destroy a high-performing culture. The high performers won't complain forever. They will simply leave when they see that mediocrity is tolerated.
But if a founder naturally hates conflict, how do they fix this? How do you hold people accountable without feeling like a dictator?
By redefining what success looks like from day one. You use clear systems like OKRs, objectives, and key results.
OKRs, right.
Because conflict in management almost always arises from ambiguity. If an employee doesn't really know what they're supposed to be doing, holding them accountable feels like a personal attack.
And because it becomes about their personality, not the actual work.
Exactly. But if you have OKRs, the framework does all the heavy lifting. The objective is the destination, say, increase website traffic. The key results are the measurable GPS coordinates like publish 4 articles a week and increase organic search by 15%.
I see.
You grant the employee total autonomy on how they achieve those results, but the accountability is entirely built into the system. You aren't attacking their character, you are simply reviewing the measurable results.
It completely shifts the focus to the outcome rather than micromanaging the process. And, speaking of outcomes, there was a fantastic low-effort, high-impact tip in the Vistage article about how to maintain connection with your team and spot those future leaders.
The dream walks.
Yes. A young CEO they worked with does a 15-minute dream walk every Tuesday and Thursday morning.
A dream walk, I love that term.
Isn't it great? He just walks around the lake outside his office building, and he has his assistant schedule key employees to walk with him. Just 15 minutes. And during that walk, he simply asks them about their vision for the future of the company and their vision for themselves.
That's powerful.
By taking them out of the boardroom and walking in nature, it strips away the power dynamic. It's highly personal. And it was exactly how he identified the perfect candidate to eventually become the president of his company.
That is a brilliant example of a CEO focusing entirely on the who. And it ties directly into what Vistage identifies as the 8 hurdles of transitioning from founder to CEO.
Right, the 8 hurdles.
While they list several operational challenges, they emphasize that the absolute hardest hurdle is developing a management team that you completely trust and learning to genuinely delegate to them.
Because trust builds speed.
It is the ultimate accelerator. When a team trusts each other, they move at breakneck speed. But to build that trust, the leader has to model vulnerability, provide crystal clear direction through things like those OKRs, and actively replace their old habit of doing it all yourself with a new habit of enabling others to succeed.
Wow. What a journey this has been today. I mean, we started with the realization that the 24/7 hustle culture is effectively dead, and that investors really just want sustainable growth.
We explored that brutal Midas touch ego check too.
Yes, and the terrifying math of watching your ad returns plummet from 1.3 to 0.6.
And then we walked through the mechanics of the 1 to 10 framework to find your critical few, the necessity of hunting for those 10x people to handle everything else, and the absolute mandate to defend your culture against broken windows.
You walk past what you endorse.
Always. And I want to remind you, the listener, that this shift from operator to owner isn't just some corporate playbook for massive tech startups. It is a fundamental shift in how you operate in the world.
Absolutely.
It is for anyone who wants to stop being the bottleneck in their own life. It's about building systems, empowering teams, and creating habits that thrive without your constant panicked intervention.
And that actually leads me to a final thought for you to ponder. We've spent a lot of time today talking about applying the critical few to your business tasks, your strategy, and your team.
Right.
But think about your own personal energy for a second. What if the most important critical few aren't items on a to-do list at all?
That's an interesting point.
What if they are the handful of non-negotiable personal boundaries you must enforce, like protected time with your family, offline hobbies, or just a full night's sleep, to ensure you never slip back into the trap of being a burned-out operator?
Because if you don't manage your boundaries, the business will manage you.
That's the truth. It's about knowing when it's time to stop lugging the amps around and finally step back to just listen to the music you've created. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the operator to owner transition. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.